Alright, a quick review of multiplication and division rules in integers. They have the same set of rules for both of them. You can do it by saying, well, they have the same sign, well, then your answer is positive, or if they have different signs, your answer is negative. That works if you're doing just two numbers at a time. Otherwise, you can use this rule, which I like a little bit better. That's if you count the number of negatives in a multiplication division problem. Now, if there's addition and subtraction, you can't use this, but if it's all multiplication division, you can simply count the negatives, and if you have an even number of negatives, then your answer is positive, and if you have an odd number of negatives, your answer is negative. Now, we use that, and we still go back to using our absolute value. So to review, let's do the first problem. It says negative 6 times negative 2. Well, I just do 6 times 2, which is 12. But then I count the negatives, there's 2, which is an even number, so my answer is positive 12. Skip down to this next problem down here. I can simply take 3 times 6 times 1 times 2 times 2. Well, 3 times 6 is 18, times 1 is still 18, times 2 is 36, and times 2 is 72. And then I count the negatives again. There's 1 negative, 2 negatives, 3 negatives, 4 negatives. That's an even number, so your answer is positive 72. This is the tricky one for me. A lot of kids miss this because you can only see one negative, but this really stands for negative 2 times negative 2 times negative 2 times negative 2. And if you count those negatives, that's 4 negatives, which makes your answer positive. And you're just doing 2 times 2 times 2 times 2, which is 16. Okay, I'll skip over to the right-hand side. These will all be negative, obviously. So I look at the first one. I still just do the absolute value. 9 times 4 is 36, but I count the negatives. There's only one negative this time, which is an odd number, so my answer is negative 36. Still do the absolute value with this next problem. I do 2 times 5, which is 10, times 3, which is 30, but I count the negatives. I have 1, 2, 3 negatives. That makes it negative 30 because it's an odd number of negatives. Next one, even if you have division in here, this is our first division problem, and I have 6 times 5 times 2, which would be 60 up on top with their absolute values. And then I have 2 times 1 times 5, which is 10 on the bottom. And then I'm going to have to erase that because I need to go back and look at how many negatives we have. So I had 60 divided by 10, which is 6, of course. And then I count my negatives 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. That's an odd number, so your answer is negative 6. Oh, and the last one is addition. What do you know? If it's addition, we have totally different rules, so you got to be careful, and that's where a lot of kids struggle, is they get their multiplication division rules mixed up with their addition subtraction rules. It's an addition rule in this one. On that one, I'm not doing what this says and counting the negatives. I'm looking to determine if they match. They don't match, so they fight. So I subtract, and remember the negatives win it because the sign of the larger absolute value. So I want to throw in an addition problem every once in a while in there just so you see, oh yeah, we have totally different rules. All right, so let's go to this middle column. I see I have multiplication and division, so I'm going to count the negatives right away this time. I have 1, 2, 3, 4. This is going to be a positive answer. Now I just do the math. 2 times 3 is 6, times 4 is 24, times 1 is 24. So 24 on the top. And then 6 times 1 times 2 is 12 on the bottom, and 24 divided by 12 is 2. And again, I'd already counted the negatives to find out there were 4, an even number of negatives. Go to the next one. It's all multiplication. This time I'll count the negatives right away. I have 1, 2, 3, 4 again, so it's going to be positive again. And now I just go back to the absolute value. 2 times 3 is 6, times 4 is 24, times 1 is 24, and I already know it's positive. Third one. Uh-oh, look at here again. We have another addition problem. We have to switch back to our rules. We're not counting the negatives on this one. We're determining if they match. Do they match? Yeah, they're on the same team, so I add their absolute values, and I use that same sign. It's not about counting them, it's about determining if they're fighting each other or if they're getting together as a team. And so my last one, I'm looking at it, I'm counting my negatives because we are in multiplication. I have 3 negatives, which makes this answer going to be negative. And now I just do 3 times 1, which is 3, times 2, which is 6, times 4, which is 24, and we've solved all the problems.